Very good afternoon, students. Now, the question is describe the rectus sheath under following heads. The introduction of the rectus sheath, where it is formed, okay, and then how it is formed. So, second point will be formation of the rectus sheath, and third, what are the structures which lie within the rectus sheath, okay. Then ultimately the applied importance, okay. So this is an important question from the abdomen, anterior abdominal wall, okay. And let's come to the first point, the introduction of the rectus sheath, okay. Now in introduction we can say that on either side of the anterior midline of the abdomen, okay, anterior midline, okay, on right side as well as onto the left side into the anterior abdominal wall, there is presence of rectus abdominis muscle, okay. Now this is a long flat strip of muscle. You can see in this diagram, on this side I have shown the rectus abdominis muscle. You can see here the origin is from below, that is from pubic symphysis, pubic crest, pubic tubercle, okay, part of the pubic tubercle. Then the fibers, they run upward, okay, and they just spread up to insert right from in a horizontal line, right from 5th, 6th and 7th costal cartilage and adjacent part of the rib and to the gypite process, okay, so this is the origin and insertion of the rectus sheath, which I said is the long flat strap muscle, okay. It is a strap like muscle, okay. Now this muscle rectus sheath is present both on right side as well as left side, okay, on either side of the median plane, midline, okay, midline, okay. And this muscle is enclosed in an aponeurotic sheath. What do you mean by aponeurotic sheath? That means this muscle is enclosed, okay, and covered anteriorly and posteriorly by aponeurosis, and this aponeurosis they are the actually ultimately derived as this tendon of insertion, which are aponeurotic in nature, flat, okay. So tendon of the external oblique abdominis, internal oblique abdominis and transversus abdominis. This muscle, as they go towards the insertion in the midline on the linea alba, they are flat aponeurosis, and this flat aponeurosis of these three muscles, they ultimately enclose this long muscle rectus abdominis on either side and forms the rectus sheath. So the rectus sheath is a sheath of aponeurosis formed by the aponeurotic insertion of the three anterior abdominal wall muscles, okay, anterior abdominal wall muscle, okay. Now this aponeurotic sheath or the rectus sheath has two walls, an anterior wall and a posterior wall, okay. We will see just now how the anterior wall is formed and how the posterior wall is formed, okay, of this rectus sheath. So in this diagram I have just shown the origin and insertion of the rectus sheath, and these are the three muscular intersection, which are just nothing but the tendons, okay. And on this side I have shown that the structure seen after the removal of the muscle, that means we will cut this muscle and remove it, okay, or reflect it upwards and downward, and then we'll see the posterior wall of the rectus sheath. So this is the posterior wall of the rectus sheath is shown here in this violet color here, and this is the arcuate line where rectus sheath will end, okay. So we will come back to this diagram when I will show you the posterior wall, but just understand this diagram, okay. Now then we come to this rectus sheath formation, okay. The second point, the second point is the formation of the rectus sheath, as the anterior and posterior aponeurotic wall of rectus sheath are formed by aponeurosis of the three flat muscles, okay, of anterior abdominal wall, which I have already said to you. these three abdominal muscles are external, internal, and transversus abdominis muscle, okay, and transversus abdominis muscle. Now, this rectus sheath formation we will learn in three different places. That means above the costal margin, that means how this rectus sheath is formed above the costal. That is, this is the 7th costal cartilage, 8th costal, 9th, and then the 10th. Above this, okay, how is the rectus sheath is forming above this costal margin, okay? And then in the second step, we will learn that how this rectus sheath is formed between costal margin and the arcuate line. Let us see. This is the costal margin and this is the arcuate line, okay? So on this side also I will just by dotted line will draw the arcuate line. So from this costal margin to that of the arcuate line, how the rectus sheath is formed. And in the third step, we will learn how this rectus sheath is formed below the arcuate line. So below the arcuate line. So understand it again. We are going to learn the formation of the rectus sheath above the costal margin, okay, then between the costal margin and arcuate line, and then between arcuate line and its lower end, okay, or below the arcuate line, how it is formed. Let us come how the rectus sheath is formed above the costal margin, okay. So if you will see the anterior wall of the rectus sheath above the costal margin, it is quite simple, okay. It is formed by the aponeurosis of just a single muscle, external oblique abdominis. This is the cross section, very simple diagram. Just draw here the this section is passing through this Gibbite process. See this Gibbite process, and this section is passing through this. Okay, so this is the Gibbite process. This is the 7th, 6th, and 5th costal cartilage on which this rectus abdominis muscle is lying. Directly it is lying. See here, this is directly lying onto the costal cartilages and a little part of the ribs also. Okay. So this is directly lying onto the below the level of the 5th costal cartilage. Okay. So it lies directly here. So this will form its posterior relation. So what is the posterior relation here? It is the costal cartilages and intercostal muscles in between. Okay, intercostal muscle between these. Then anterior wall, as I said, is formed by the aponeurosis of the external oblique abdominis muscle. These are muscle fibers which become aponeurotic, and this thin flat tendon of the insertion will go and get attached onto the Gibbite process, okay, or onto the costal cartilage. In the midline, it will attach to the tip of the Gibbite process here. So this is the anterior wall. So the anterior wall of this will be formed by the external oblique and posteriorly the rectus muscle is directly lying onto the costal cartilages, okay. So here if you will see that above the costal margin, the rectus sheath is having only anterior wall, okay. Sheath of, please note that this is the sheath of the rectus abdominis muscle, that how it is enclosed within the sheath. So here it is having only anterior wall of the sheath. As we will go low down, we will see that it has both anterior and posterior wall of the sheath, okay. And but here above the costal margin, the posterior wall is deficient, means it is not present. So the posterior wall is not present here, okay. So I hope that this simple diagram which is showing here that how the muscle is lying on costal cartilage only covered by the external oblique abdominis aponeurosis, okay, which is forming the anterior wall of the sheath. I think this you can understand with this diagram also. In this diagram you can see this is a longitudinal section passing through the costal cartilage. It is a diagrammatical represented. So this a longitudinal section passing through the rectus abdominis muscle on one side. Okay, so this is that rectus abdominis muscle is here. You can see here. See this rectus abdominis muscle, and it is lying on to the 5th, 6th and 7th costal cartilage and intervening intercostal muscles, and membrane will be also there. I have just represented only the intercostal muscle. So this part of the rectus muscle, okay, abdominis muscle, it is lying onto the costal cartilage. So this sheath is not here. So this is the posterior wall and this is the anterior wall, that is the aponeurosis of the external oblique abdominis, which represent here the anterior wall of the rectus sheath, and it is throughout, right from the 5th costal cartilage where it is the upper end of the rectus abdominis muscle is there till it ends into the pubic symphysis and pubic crest. This whole thing is covered by the anterior wall, while the posterior wall here will begin here below the margin of the 7th costal cartilage and will extend only up to the arcuate line. This is the arcuate line, and in this diagram I have shown you that this is the arcuate line and this is. So this is the posterior wall of the rectus sheath, okay, because the rectus muscle we have taken it out and only the posterior wall of the sheath which is extending up to the arcuate line, okay, arcuate line. Okay, let us come to the formation of the rectus sheath, which is between costal margin and the arcuate line. See here in this diagram, this is the costal margin here, between costal margin and that of up to the arcuate line. Okay, this is the arcuate line. So what are the structure which forms the rectus sheath here? In this diagram you can see that from the costal margin right up to the arcuate line. So this sheath we are learning here now in this. So let us see the anterior wall, how the anterior wall of the rectus sheath is forming. Now here all the three muscles, external oblique abdominis, internal oblique and transversus abdominis, they take part in formation of the rectus sheath. Now see, this external oblique abdominis gives the aponeurosis of the muscle which goes to the midline where there is a linea alba. This is the alba is called because it is white, made up of the collagen bundle attached to the Giffite process above and below to the pubic symphysis. So this is a central tendon of insertion where the muscle from right as well as from the left side of the external abdominal wall, I mean say the anterior abdominal wall will come attach onto the linea alba. That means from right as well as from left side. But before they come and attach onto the linea alba, they form the rectus sheath to enclose a long strap-like muscle which is present on either side of the median plane. Okay, on either side of the linea alba. Okay, imagine the same on this side also. Okay, on this. So let us see what are the structure which will form the sheath which will enclose the rectus abdominis muscle. As I said that the anteriormost is the external oblique abdominis, which we have already seen in the upper part, costal part also. Okay, then this is the internal oblique abdominis aponeurosis, which will split into two layers. Okay, one are the anterior layer and the posterior layer, which is called as the lamellae. So this is anterior lamellae and this is the posterior lamina of the anterior, I mean say internal oblique abdominis muscle. The anterior lamina will go and fuse on the undersurface of the aponeurosis of the external oblique abdominis, and both will combine after fusing will join to the linea alba here in the midline, median plane. Similarly, the posterior lamina of the internal oblique here will go and fuse with the aponeurosis of the transversus abdominis. See, this is the transverse and this will fuse with it, okay, the posterior lamina of the internal oblique, and both fused laminae then they will go and get attached onto the linea alba. Thus you see that the rectus abdominis muscle between the costal margin and arcuate line is very well protected in the sheath. Okay, it is surrounded by, it is covered anteriorly by the anterior wall of the rectus sheath, posteriorly by the posterior wall of the rectus sheath, and we know that anterior wall of the rectus sheath here in this region is formed by the external oblique abdominis as well as the anterior layer of the this internal oblique muscle or anterior lamina of the internal oblique muscle, because it is splits into two laminae, anterior and posterior, and the posterior wall is formed by the transverse abdominis aponeurosis and the posterior lamina of the internal oblique muscle. I hope that this simple thing is clear to you. So this is how anterior and posterior wall of the rectus sheath are formed between the costal margin and the arcuate line. Okay, and the arcuate line. Let us now, you can see this same thing here also. See, this was the anterior wall, okay, which is formed by the external oblique abdominis and the anterior lamina of the internal oblique, okay, and this is the posterior wall, which is also the fused part of the transversus abdominis and the posterior lamina of the internal oblique. Now, so there is an anterior layer and the posterior layer of the rectus sheath. Thus, the muscle is covered anteriorly as well as posteriorly, which otherwise was not covered posteriorly, because muscle was directly resting on the fifth, sixth, and seventh costal cartilages, right? Okay, let us now come to the region where it is below the arcuate line. So how the rectus sheath is formed below the arcuate line. So let us see the anterior wall of the rectus sheath, okay, which is formed below the arcuate line. Here it is formed by the three muscles, aponeurosis of the three muscles, external oblique, internal oblique, and the transversus abdominis. They send their aponeurosis now. All aponeurosis, they go anterior to the rectus abdominis muscle, and then they fuse to the linea alba. Okay, throughout in midline it is fusing to that of the linea alba. This is the linea alba, dotted line. This is the umbilicus is here, and this is the linea where it is fusing. So throughout it will fuse to that of the linea alba. So this is the anterior wall. So there is only anterior wall below the arcuate line, and below the arcuate line the posterior wall is formed by the fascia transversalis. Okay, so deep to the three external muscle, anterior abdominal wall muscles, external oblique, internal oblique, and transverse, just deep to it is lined by a fascia called as fascia transversalis, okay, because it is deep to the transverse abdominis. That's why it is called fascia transversalis, because intimately it is from inside covering to the transversus abdominis muscle. So this is the transversus abdominis. So that means in the remaining part below the arcuate line, muscle will directly lie onto the transversus, fascia transversalis, and just deep to the fascia transversalis is that of the extraperitoneal fate, and deep to will come the peritoneum, okay, parietal peritoneum. And if you will cut an open parietal peritoneum, you will go inside the abdominal wall, okay, where viscera are located. Intestinal loop, you will go immediately on the intestinal loop. Now from this diagram, I think you will understand better what are the posterior relation, okay. The posterior relation below the arcuate line right up to the pubic crest and pubic symphysis, there is no posterior wall. So the posterior wall of the sheath was not there above the costal margin, so it is also not there below the arcuate line. So only in the intermediate part, that is from costal margin to the arcuate line, only the sheath was complete, having anterior wall as well as the posterior wall. But below the arcuate line, it is the fascia transversalis on which the muscle will directly lie, okay, directly. So these were the relation and formation of the rectus sheath in three different zones, okay, in three different zones were there, right. Let us now come to the contents of the rectus sheath. That means what are the structures which are present between the anterior and posterior wall of the rectus sheath. Number one, it is the muscle, okay, to which it is enclosing. Which is that muscle? It is the rectus abdominis, long strap-like muscle here. Okay, so this encloses the muscle for which this sheath is there. Okay, sheath is formed just to enclose this muscle, long muscle extending from pubic symphysis to the xiphoid process and up to the fifth costal cartilage. So to this muscle it is enclosing. So first content will be which muscle? Rectus abdominis muscle. Okay, rectus abdominis muscle. Now occasionally there is another muscle present here which is within the rectus sheath, anterior to the rectus abdominis muscle, but it is a very small muscle, triangular in shape. Okay, and a small muscle, triangular in shape, which goes and gets attached to the linea alba. Okay, this is called as pyramidalis. Okay, pyramidalis. That is the small muscle which is there. Okay, this is called as the pyramidalis. Then these are the only two muscles which are present within the rectus sheath. Okay, within. Then let us come to the second content, that is arteries. And arteries are, one artery comes from above, another artery goes from below within the rectus sheath. So the arteries are superior epigastric artery, and this is that superior epigastric artery. See here, this artery lies first within the thorax, deep to the costal cartilages and this intercostal muscle, and then when it comes to the margin of the seventh costal cartilage, deep to the diaphragm, it comes out, and then it pierces the posterior wall, okay, which is formed by the aponeurosis, transverse abdominis and posterior lamina of the internal oblique. It pierces that just deep to that of the seventh costal cartilage, and then it comes, okay, within the rectus sheath, means between anterior wall and posterior wall, and first it lies deep to the rectus abdominis muscle here, runs downwards towards umbilicus, okay, and then here within the substance of the muscle it will anastomose with another artery which is coming from below within the rectus sheath, and this is the inferior epigastric artery. Inferior epigastric artery. Epigastric. Now the superior epigastric artery is a branch from the internal thoracic artery, okay, which divides at the in the sixth intercostal space in two branches, musculocutaneous and the musculodiaphragmatic, not cutaneous, please. Musculophrenic, okay, which is supplying to the muscles, intercostal muscle and to the diaphragm. So it is called as musculophrenic, and this is second branch which arises, terminal branch of the internal thoracic, which is known as superior epigastric artery. So this is superior epigastric artery, is a branch of the internal thoracic artery, right? Okay, inferior epigastric artery which comes from below is a branch from the external iliac artery, okay, and then it goes, pierces the fascia transversalis here, okay, and then it goes deep to the arcuate line, okay, in this rectus sheath. So from arcuate line it goes deep inside the rectus sheath, that means between anterior and posterior layer of the rectus sheath, and then it will pierce the muscle and will anastomose with the superior epigastric artery. So these are the two important arteries which are present in the rectus sheath, okay. They will supply the neighboring area to the muscles, I mean to say this rectus abdominis muscle. Veins. Now the veins are of the same name and they run along with the same name arteries. Superior epigastric vein, and inferior epigastric vein. So they are the same vein and they will go to the internal thoracic and here it will go to the external iliac, okay, veins. They will drain into. So the veins are of the same name as that of the arteries, right? Nerves. Now the nerves are there, lower 5 intercostal nerve and T12 means subcostal. So lower 5 intercostal, that is T7, thoracic 7, 8, 9, 10 and 11. Okay, they are intercostal. And T12 will be called as lower 5 intercostal and subcostal. That is T12 is the subcostal nerve. It is called as subcostal nerve. So these are the content within the rectus sheath. They run along with the in between the muscles, okay, of the anterior abdominal wall and will come into the rectus sheath, okay, will come into the rectus sheath. So they are also the content of the rectus sheath. Lower 5 intercostal and subcostal. Let us come to the functions. Function. Why there is a formation of the rectus sheath? Okay, formation of the rectus sheath is because anterior abdominal wall, which is made up of the external, internal, and the transversus abdominis muscle, they are flat muscles, okay, and they insert in the midline onto the linea alba. But then there is an important muscle on either side of the midline, that is the rectus abdominis, and this is enclosed by this aponeurotic tendons of these 3 external abdominal muscles, okay, and this provide a sheath, okay, a sheath in which the muscle is enclosed, okay, muscle. So whenever this muscle will contract, and what is the function of the rectus abdominis muscle? It flexes, okay, when it contracts it will become short between the costal margin and the pubic symphysis, okay, and if sheath would have not been there, okay, it would have not been there, then this muscle will bulge out in the midline, okay, I mean say on either side of the median plane the muscle will bulge out between the two attachment, origin and insertion. But even when sheath is there, when this muscle is contracting, it is not bulging like the bowstring. It is not coming, otherwise it will come out. Okay, so that is the purpose of formation of the rectus sheath, because when it is contracting, it should not bulge out. Okay, now then this sheath gives strength to the anterior abdominal wall, okay. Imagine that rectus abdominis without any sheath will not be that strong as it is with the sheath, okay. When you go to the dissection hall, try to realize this fact that within the sheath the muscle is much more, I mean say anterior abdominal wall is much more strong in nature. Lastly, let us come to the applied anatomy. And in applied anatomy, I will just tell you one point. That means since this muscle, the sheath is forming, okay, on either side of the median plane here, you can see here, this is the median plane, and I will just this dotted line is nothing but the linea alba, which is a fibrous band on which this aponeurotic sheath is coming and getting attached. So on either side of this, there is this right rectus sheath and rectus abdominis muscle, and on this will be the left rectus abdominis muscle will be there, okay. And then nerves are coming, that is intercostal nerve, okay, and then the subcostal nerves are coming, which are coming into from lateral side to the rectus sheath. Similarly, the arteries will come, nerve will come, okay. And then you will see that, but close to this median plane, very close to this median plane, what will happen in close to this median plane? There will be no nerve, there will be no blood vessels, there will be minute, of course, not a very significant nerves and blood vessel. So what surgeons they do, okay, what surgeons they do, that they give a paramedian incision. If they want to open the abdominal cavity, they will give a paramedian incision here on either side of the median plane, okay. I mean, say on one side, not on the other side, one side of the median plane, okay, by just pushing the rectus abdominis muscle to one side, okay, lateral side, and then they can cut this anterior and posterior wall of the rectus sheath to go inside the peritoneal cavity. Why it is necessary, okay, why it is they choose this route? This route is chosen because in this area the nerve supply and the blood supply, especially the blood supply, is minimal, okay, minimal. So chances of bleedings are less. No major significant artery is present here. That is the applied importance of the this knowing the anatomy of the rectus sheath. So you can give a paramedian incision. Surgeon used to give the paramedian incision. This complete your question on the rectus sheath under different heads. For example, introduction, formation, contents, and then its function and applied importance. Okay. Thank you very much for watching this video.